Hey everybody, Sean Rhodes here, Chief Sales Sergeant at Bulletproof Selling. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, if it's your first time joining us, the one thing that you need to know is that hope is not a sales strategy. And that's why we are here each week, sometimes multiple times a week, interviewing the top minds in sales to learn how to improve the performance of salespeople and the performance of those salespeople's pipelines. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, we get to interview those top minds, the speakers, consultants, authors, trainers, and those that have been out there and still are on the front lines managing salespeople and then getting salespeople ready who are in the next generation, the folks that are going to pick up the reins and keep the profession of sales moving forward. Now, my commitment is that out of every single one of these episodes, I'm going to build a sales system with my guest that you can use no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals. Now, if you've tuned into us before, then you know a little bit about my background. U.S. Marine, tasked with studying the highest performing teams on the planet and transferring everything that I learned into the field of sales. Well, occasionally you run into a doppelganger in the world. I mean, somebody else that has a similar background, very similar background, in fact, and is out there doing a very similar thing, working in the field of sales, applying that military methodology into what they do. And that's why it is my absolute pleasure to welcome on the show today another former Marine, Mr. Raleigh Wilkins. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. It's glad to be here.
Now, Raleigh, you have a interesting background, very similar to mine, and then
Yeah.
what you're doing in the field of sales today. Definitely, let's start out by sharing that. Tell us kind of where you came from, briefly what you did in the Marine Corps, and how you're applying that into the world today, where you're actually preparing that next generation of salespeople to step into our profession.
Yeah, I'll give you the high level version of
Yeah.
the life story here. So I was born at a young age in Franklin, Virginia, and it was, but so small town kid, Franklin, Virginia. Um, Good service ethic in the family I grew up in. Everybody just about served in the military that could. My dad was a World War II vet. My uncle was a Marine. And so my other uncle was an entrepreneur. And so I grew up surrounded by this, talks at the dinner table as a young kid about business. And then older, I got to hear, my uncles. It was a difficult childhood. And I bring that up only because, it built some resilience and a care and a compassion for people. I ended up, by the time I was 15, living with different families in a foster care system. And then, finally ended up getting into graduating, going to college, and then kind of hit an emotional bottom, honestly.
Mm.
And at that point, my grandmother, rest her soul, Mama Dodd, said, "It's either the Marine Corps or the monastery, and I'm sure them priests don't want you." So it was at 20, I joined the Marine Corps right before my 21st birthday, and it literally saved my life.
Mm.
I have no doubt that if it hadn't been for the Marine Corps, I would not be on the show now for sure, but I don't know what would have happened. And so that was a really cool experience. I don't know how many people go through Paris Island, and it was literally like it compressed all the therapy I had ever been in into 14 weeks. And when I was transformed, when I graduated, something in me had shifted. I had become a service minded, other centered, mission than team than self
Hmm.
individual. And it gave me this it tapped into that indomitable spirit that I think we all have, but you don't all get pushed to it. And so
Hmm.
that was really powerful for me. And so Marine Corps, same. You summed up the Marine Corps experience better than I could, so I'm going to leave it to that. But leaving the Marine Corps after 6 years was a difficult decision. Some of it was based upon a desire to go try something new. I love the military and I loved what it did for me. The challenge is it's time and rank, time and grade. And I was on this path where it was like I did not see, my ambitions did not no longer matched what was going to happen with the Marine Corps. And so I made a decision to get out. Long story, we're not going to get into that today, but decided that I was going to go and be a lawyer. I wanted to be a
Hmm.
maritime lawyer. And so I enrolled in school, started taking classes, and then it was like, okay, here I am. I'm trying to do all of these things. And I just like law, I don't know, economics maybe. And then I had a job that I'd gotten to support myself is a chief of staff for an executive VP of operations at Phillips. And it's really glorified secretary role.
Hmm.
But what they did is put me in a boardroom where I got to hear some of the most brilliant minds, women and men who were just like top of their careers, debating business issues. And I realized not only did I understand what they were saying somehow intuitively, that there was an overlay behind it, that there was an overlay of what I learned in the military and what they were doing in business. And as a matter of fact, if they would just apply certain principles I learned in the business and in the military, they would
Hmm.
be successful. And I was able to contribute in a way that they thought I had an MBA, not a guy who was coming out of the Marine Corps trying to cobble together a law degree. And it wasn't because it was, some of it was my uncle around the table, some of it was just intuitive. I think you have a sense for that kind of refractory thinking. And then the other side was the training that we had gotten, the 5 paragraph orders, the BAMSIS, the SMEAC, the, MAT T's, the integrity we had in reporting, because, if you lie and say there's 100 people there and there's 1,000 people will die. So you learn
Yeah, yeah,
integrity,
exactly.
you know,
Now,
and it's,
walk us through that transition into
yeah.
sales then, because I want to make sure that we give plenty of time for people to understand what you do today, because I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
really
sure.
unique in
Yeah.
the field of sales.
Yeah, so I'll jump to the end, so we do that because it's probably people already stopped listening if it's too much of this, like, Stewart Smiley kind of talk. But what I do now is I run an organization called Sales Platoon. We train active duty military and recently separated vets who are underemployed for a career in B2B sales.
Hmm.
And if you're a veteran and you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, I have no desire to be in sales. Salespeople are the ones that call and annoy me in the middle of the night, call me, in the morning and during lunch. They're trying to sell things to me that I'm not sure I want, and they pressure me. I have no
Hmm.
desire to be Jordan Belfort or to sell insurance or to sell roofing and knock on doors. And I can say I empathize 100% because when I came off active duty, I actually sold vacuum cleaners door to door. I sold Kirby vacuums, and I was pretty good at it. And I learned a lot about selling, but I also learned that I didn't want to be 55 years old knocking on your door and trying to clean a room or carpet so I could leave with a check at the end of the day. I don't
Yeah.
care how good the product is. And so I thought, and then I started to move into marketing because I realized marketing was kind of the Intel world. It's the CIA, the O2 of the world that takes a product and is now trying to understand what competitors are doing and then jump ahead of the market. And so that's what I ended up shifting my degree to. So I got the degree in marketing, moved into Phillips, started doing some writing. But it still wasn't, I couldn't make an impact.
Mm.
And I started thinking, I wonder, and I started seeing these sales guys and they had nice cars, they had nice suits, and I was like, what do these guys do? And they're like, they're salespeople. And I was like, well, what do they do? Like, how do you sell what we do? I thought we just marketed to them. And they started explaining it to me. So I went and got a job at T-Mobile.
Mm.
And at T-Mobile, it was a B2B sales role. I only made like 28,000 a year base, but they promised me I could make like 80,000 a year if I hit quota.
Hmm.
And so I started to go to work there. And after 3 months, I'd earned myself to the 495th out of 500 reps role. So 495 reps were better than me. 5 were worse, probably only because they were hired after me. I
Yeah.
was I was literally on the worst performing team in the worst performing region in T-Mobile's history. And I was the lowest guy on the totem pole, only by one guy below me.
Hmm.
And I was ready to quit. And I went home. My roommate said to me, dude, you got to pay rent. You can't quit. And then he also said, look, it sounds like you're doing a lot of not working at work. And it sounds like you're sucking at a job that you feel like is beneath you, but you don't actually know how to do the job. Why don't you go figure out how to do the job and try it? Because I thought Marines don't quit. I was like, oh,
Nice.
now you brought Chesty
He hit
Puller
all the
into it,
buttons, didn't he?
Yeah, boy, it's like, all right. So I went and checked out a book, Cold Calling Basics by Stephen Schiffman. I'll never
Yeah.
forget it. And I read it, and it was like somebody had put me in the Marine Corps and then I discovered the field guide for Marines. It
Hmm.
was telling me what was going to happen in every one of the situations I was in that I was failing at. And I'd failed enough to know that this was the truth.
Mm.
And I said, let me try this because it was no one in the office was doing this kind of stuff, overcoming objections and writing them up, putting them on the wall. And so I said, I got nothing to lose here. I'm going to get fired at some point, or I'm going to have to quit. And long story short is within a month, I was able to go from a first call where it was a hard objection to getting them on the phone, to go into their organization, to solving the problem they had. And the problem the business had was communication with their sales team when they were in the field.
Mm.
And I solved that by delivering Blackberries to them. The company was better off. They actually returned money to the budget, and I had a commission check for like $8,000.
Nice.
It was a huge deal. And I thought, my God, there is something to this. And I realized in that moment I would never go hungry again.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be in the spot I was in when I was 16 in foster care, pedaling my bike, and the Raleighs bag blew up because it had too much grease in it. And that was my dinner. And that was the only thing I had for the next 2 days to eat.
Wow.
That wasn't going to happen again. And I thought, there's got to be a cadre of people within the cadre of people in sales that actually do this for a living. And I started to seek them out.
Hmm.
And in seeking them out, I started to realize there's a science behind selling. And pretty soon, within that next year, I went from that position to number 5 out of 500 reps
Wow,
at
that's a quick
T-Mobile.
turnaround.
I'd gotten 3 meritorious promotions, and I was earning well over into the 6 figures. And I'd take my first trip to France, and I went into management. And I got recruited away to head up a company that was selling synthetic DNA
Hmm.
inside the US. A guy had broken off from a company called, I forgot what it's called, Kyogen. And then he was starting a new company called Operon, and which eventually was bought by Operon MWG. But it was an interesting thing. I knew nothing about science, laboratory science, bioinformatics, any of that. But they taught all that to me. They said,
Hmm.
we don't know anything about sales. Now there was a whole lot of learning I did. When you take somebody my young as I was in my sales and leadership, put me in that kind of position, you're going to fail at a lot of things. And that's another whole podcast for another time. But
Yeah.
the idea was that I continued to work my way up. And what I found was in all of these roles, I had to fail, and I failed at things that were, I demonstrated behaviors I learned in the military that then became crippling handicaps for me when I was in leadership.
Mm.
The way I led my teams, the things I would say, the familiarity and yet the underfamiliarity, the inability for me to create lateral relationships was
Hmm.
very difficult. And so I failed at a lot of those roles, and then I figured it out. And what I figured out after about 20 years is I love chaos. I also love straightening, and I love finding people that don't know they want to be in sales and teaching them what I learned the hard way and
Let's
watching
talk
them.
about that for a
Yeah,
minute because I know that that's something that a lot of listeners are going to be interested in.
yeah.
You've been in charge of dozens and dozens of salespeople
Oh
throughout your
yeah,
career,
hundreds.
and
Yeah,
and nowadays you're into the realm of getting people that have no idea what sales is about, but getting them
yeah,
trained up. Making them
yeah.
really high performers so they can jump into a team. They're familiar with CRMs, they're familiar with scripts, they're familiar with cadences. They
Yeah.
know how to overcome objections or how to learn to overcome objections. Well, out of all of those people, both the people you've managed and now the people that you train, where do you
Mhm.
see salespeople relying on hope a little more than they should?
Well, it's funny you mentioned this because I just brought it up, probably because you sparked my thought in it, because of your, like you said, it's like talking to myself sometimes, when we have our conversations. But we were just talking in the alumni group about that. And I said, there's really 3 ways you can be successful in sales. Sales is a funny position. Sales is, yes, it's a meritocracy, but you can also be a highly paid individual who's terrible at your job and everybody thinks you're good because you won the war of attrition and you have a great account. You can
Yeah.
also be very good at your job and be underpaid for it because it's just the territory product market fit. But over any considerable period of time across multiple different companies, the real trained scientific salesperson will always outperform the person that has one of these 3. And here's the 3. You can be a product expert. If you know everything there is to know about a product, you can teach your way into success in sales if you stay inside that industry. You can
Hmm.
be a person who has naturally got the ability to build relationships with individuals and has the ability to be persuasive. Maybe you learned it through your studies, or maybe you came from a screwed up childhood, and that helped you get some good coping skills. Whatever it is, that can be leveraged for you to be able to sell B2C, business to
Hmm.
consumer, things that are transactional, because you can influence people. The third way you can become successful in sales is to follow a system of sales that is a science that is designed essentially to be an unpaid consultant, to go into organizations and diagnose problems they didn't know they had, and then to give them a solution that's going to help them operate better than they thought they could before they ever engaged with you. And for
Hmm.
that, after you've implemented, they will then adopt your product. That's what sales is, the science of selling. And I
Hmm.
can use that science to sell anything. Relying on hope is not understanding that there is a science behind sales, that when you're selling into B2B complex environments, that there is not like selling to an individual in a house on a vacuum. You're not selling the roof on the house, you're selling the house. You're going to improve the house, but the occupants change every single day. You could
Right.
have, if you're selling sugar, you're selling sugar and you think, oh, I have to be like the world's biggest sugar salesman. You have to, if you're selling it to an individual in a grocery store, yeah. But if you're selling it to a company like Hershey's, you have to talk to finance. You're gonna have to talk
Oh
to
yeah, yeah.
operations,
Multiple people in there.
purchasing, and hope is like, well, I have a great relationship with the guy in finance and he really likes me. Well, you know what? That's great. But you're going to change that. You're going to actually have them order a big bag of sugar, 100 pounds versus 50. And a guy in operations doesn't want that because he
Yeah.
already has to have a guy manually do whatever. And it's like, what he really needs is a 54-pound bag. Well,
Yeah.
if your hope is that you have a relationship with a guy in finance, you're going to get shot down by these other technical buyers. And you're going to have oh yeah, I'm there. I got it. It's fine. And look, there's only, in the other side of hope of this is the other one. And it doesn't matter if you're in B2C or B2B selling, the hope is, the strategy is that sales is a numbers game. Sales is a numbers game the way that the weather is a numbers game. You can predict it, but you
Yeah.
can't manufacture it.
Yeah.
And just because you have activities and metrics and you measure them doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It just means you're going to be able to report in with a higher degree of accuracy than the person that's relying on hope.
Yeah.
And your underlying theme is such a good one because it covers so much, Sean. It's this hope is not a strategy covers so many different topics, but we all fall victim to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the hope is that, in sales, you're doing one of two things. You're either disturbing the comforted or comforting the disturbed. Comforting the disturbed is the phone rings, they send an email, they send a product request. They've already done the research on the buyer's journey. They're already ready to buy. They've identified your product as being one of the leading ones, and all they need now is for you to help do the transaction. Those will come through. That's marketing's job. That's product's job. That's gonna happen. But you're not gonna be able to hit quote on that. Not in a structure that's real quota.
Because
You're
you're
gonna have to,
dependent on people picking up the phone and having enough interest to get in touch with you
yeah.
in some
Or you
way.
were
And
lucky enough to just call the person at the time of day that they're
right.
like, hey, I sell sugar. That's great. Hey, I sell PPE. Oh my God, our mask manufacturer just completely
Yeah.
wet the bed. Can you?
So
Yeah,
let's start talking about manufacturing the other end of that
yeah.
spectrum, because I know so many entrepreneurs and so many salespeople. To your point, they into a good account, or they are in a market where people just need what they have. They are the
Hmm.
disturbed. They're looking for comfort, so they're reaching out. Maybe they're reaching out to multiple companies that do what you do, but they're reaching out. And the challenge
Yeah,
I find with that is that it does put you in this feast or famine revenue cycle where if the phone doesn't ring and the emails don't come in, I don't have new leads in my pipeline. I'm not prospecting. I'm dependent on the action of someone else for success. And,
hmm,
you and I learned in the Marines, well, if we're ordered to take the hill, I'm not hoping that the enemy is going to be lazy that day and make my job easy. I'm going to count on them to throw everything they've got at me,
yeah,
and I have to plan to deal with that. I have to take the initiative. So
yeah,
where do you see great salespeople? And I know that you teach this to the
yeah.
students in Sales Platoon. Where do you see great people take the initiative in the sales process? What's the first step in that? Is it something that they do in the lead generation stage, prospecting stage? Is it mindset? Is it how they, build their discovery questions? How do I begin to take the initiative on this instead of just hoping things work out?
You see me smiling. And the reason I'm smiling is I'm going to say a very short answer. Yes.
Yes, yes to all. Okay.
Yes. Because it's like, which tool does a mechanic use to fix an engine that's not working? The right tool.
That, yeah.
That's the answer to the question. Look, I now am a sales trainer. Okay, I'll say it. I hate saying it, but I'm now a sales trainer. I train young women and men, and older young women and men, and whatever you identify as, I'll train it.
Yep.
How to go and learn the science of selling. I don't trust the shticks. I don't trust the people that go, it's your money, go get it. Hey, you got to 10x your life. Hey, you got
Hmm.
to say this clever phrase. That's like saying, if you're going to be a mechanic, buy this tool. This
Yeah.
tool is the only tool you'll ever need. Maybe, but if it's the only tool I'm ever going to need, it's probably going to be weird sometimes. Okay. It might work as a hammer, but it's
Yeah.
not designed to be a hammer. So you just asked a question with a whole lot of really good suggestions. And the answer is yes.
Hmm.
But when people ask me what makes a great salesperson, I almost always ask this to the cohorts. And by the way, I just want to make sure I say this too while we have time. Like, I don't charge the military veteran anything.
Mm.
This is a free course to them. It's not
That's
free to
important.
me. I write a check to $5,000 to $8,000 per person out of Raleigh's little personal piggy bank to
Yeah.
pay
Yeah.
for them to come, because I got to pay for a material structure, the rest. But
Yeah.
when it comes to them paying, mm-mm. That nobody charged me for this. They taught me. And I
Yeah.
feel like freely given, free received, I owe a lot. So we make money when companies say, look, we're tired of finding bad talent or hiring, based on behavior or personality scores or from collegiate, and it's a 50-50 at best. We need people with grit, determination, resilience. Well, we also would like to know if they've actually gotten through and know that they want to sell or not. And in
Hmm.
week 5 of our cohort, we make every one of our cohort members make a decision about whether they want to be in sales or not, because they've picked up the phone, they've gotten calls, they've gotten rejected, they've used CRM, they're certified on HubSpot, they're certified on LinkedIn, they're certified on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, they know how to use Connect and Sell and whatever else,
And
discover.org and
everything you just
ZoomInfo.
said, I know there's sales leaders out there being like, "Oh my gosh, you actually provide people that are they've been through sales boot camp already."
Yeah, they've
And
already gone through the first 90 days of onboarding.
And in
And
addition to
that's
that, they're coming out of at least 4 years of structure,
at
of being
least,
held to integrity, of showing up on time,
yeah,
of having the lives of their brothers and sisters in their hands, and plus
yeah.
all of the other things. Like that's incredible. That's crazy. So let's let's build something interesting here, because I do want to take the time to build a sales system with you, and I'm going to
Hmm.
give you an impossible task, okay? Because I know
Okay.
you can handle it. All right. You're not just going to take the hill. I'm just going to give you a stick and say there's 1,000 NVA on the top of the hill. Go for it.
Okay.
Okay. Here's how we're going to do it. Where could a salesperson most benefit by taking something that you see in all of your military candidates and applying it into the field of sales for themselves, assuming they have no military experience? What would that
Yeah.
thing be that would really make an impact in their lives?
I'm going to give you an answer that seems counterintuitive. And it's the same question that I ask the cohort, which is, what is the number one characteristic of a successful salesperson, a lifetime salesperson?
Mm.
And the answer to that question and yours is humility.
Hmm.
And I don't mean humiliation. I mean humility as being a clear recognition of my skills and abilities as they currently exist in this moment, followed, and most importantly, by a sincere desire to improve them.
So this is in the military, the constant path that we're all on to up level. And in the
Yeah.
military, it comes down to life and death. And I'm sure you were taught
Yeah.
this as well, that
Yeah.
my sergeant could be taken out at a moment's notice. If I don't know how to do his job, that could mean more lives are lost if I'm next
Right.
up
But even more
to take that
important,
platoon commander
if I
position.
can even build on your example, even more
Yeah.
importantly, it's the integrity and humility to say, I don't know. Most people in this world that I come across, those are the 3 words they hate the most.
Yeah, because
I
it makes you look
don't
weak, vulnerable,
know.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it takes so much humility to say, I don't know. Look, when I was at that moment in T-Mobile, I guarantee you there was moments I wanted to quit. It was everybody else's fault. Nobody understands. No one's giving me a shake. I get all the bad leads, whatever it is. And the reality is that I had to go to that moment of that midnight of the soul where I look in the mirror and say, what's going on with you? Somebody somewhere is going to come into this role behind you and be successful. What are they doing, learning, teaching, performing at that you are not willing to learn, teach, do, or perform?
Hmm.
And we all learned that. I'll never forget the day. And we got a few minutes here, but I'll tell you this story. And this is my transfer. This is my life hinged on this moment. I'll tell it to you because it was a great story from the Marines. I hope it's okay. Is it okay if I tell the story?
Yeah, we still need to build a system though. So go
Yeah.
ahead
All
and
right.
tell
So
it,
real
man.
quick.
Yeah.
All right. The real quick story was that we were out for a run. We're about, I don't know, 8 weeks into boot camp. It's when you're starting. We had a guy jumped off the 3-story building. We had a guy try to kill himself with the safety razor. Like it was like people can't handle the pressure around
Yeah.
8 weeks. And I was starting to melt down too, because it didn't matter how fast I ran, what I did. I mean, I had burns on my hands. Everything was torn up. I was like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I can go home and get ice cream. And we were on a run, and we were on the base, and I thought I saw my uncle's car drive on, which you never see cars when you're in Paris Island.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it was just a moment. It reminded me, wait, this is a moment in time. Your life is not boot camp. And I thought, you know what? This thought came was as clear as me. You're never going to run fast enough. You're never going to climb high enough. You're never going to get a high enough score to impress the drill instructors.
Yeah.
Are you running as fast as you can right now? And
Mm.
the answer was no. And it was like as clear as a day. The light switch went on, and it was like, this is my life. I'm in charge. I'm going to push me. No one's going to break me. If anybody's going to break me, I'm going to break me. And I tried to break myself on that run. And I started speeding up and I was dying, and there was some Marines in the way and they wouldn't get out of the way. So I said, "Gangway Marine." And, they wouldn't get out of the way. And I said, "Fine." I just knocked him over in a ditch, right? Get the hell out of my way. I'm on a mission, not my problem. You want to hang out and smoke a joke? I'm on a mission.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
another Marine came up to me and he said, and I'll shorten it here, but he said, "I'm the command sergeant major here, or command major." That's what it
yeah,
was. And I saw what you did to those Marines. Or to those recruits. We don't do that. You find me afterwards with your drill instructor. We're going to address this. And I was like, holy, like I finally get a little initiative,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm like, going to get beaten up by some stupid officer who's like, ruled. And, so I find my drill instructor and I explain myself, "Sir, recruit workers, customer speak to," the whole deal. And he's
yeah.
like, "What did you do?" It's like, and I told him, and then right then the major came over and he chewed out my drill instructor. And I'm like, I'm going to get killed. Like there's going to be
Yeah.
there are literally going to be a little pile of blood and ashes in the IPT pit. And, and afterwards he comes up to me and I'm like, and it was our heavy too. And I was like, oh God, he's going to kill me. It's Staff Sergeant Davis. And "Wait, did you do this? No, you do it." I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir." He goes, "I will take that kind of ass chewing every day. You keep doing what you're doing."
Nice.
You couldn't have held me on the earth with a 1,000-pound chain
I'll bet because you
that
actually showed
day.
initiative. So let's people probably don't want to go through the experience of Paris Island, but I know they would benefit from having the mentality of how do I up level?
Hmm.
Like how do I take this
Yeah.
mentality that Raleigh's talking about and begin to
Yeah.
build it? Because it could apply and it's going to apply differently to every single person that picks this system up. So let's
Yeah.
make it general enough for people to use at any
Yeah.
point in their sales process. So we
Yeah.
talk
Sure.
about building systems here at Bulletproof Selling. It's trimming
Yeah.
hope away from the sales strategy. So the
Yeah.
T in trim is trigger. What is the triggering event for me as a salesperson to know that's an area that I can up level in? Does it come from within?
Yeah.
Is it something my manager pushes down on me? How do I know that like that's an area I could identify to go begin doing the research on?
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think going back to that humility again to say, like, look, no matter how good I am, there's always something I can be better at. And so
Hmm.
seek criticism. I
Mm.
always say that I don't like criticism because I have a low emotional threshold for criticism and I always suffer from it, but I need it to develop. So please give it to me anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay, so
I
I
will
love
take
it
it.
right there. Seek
Yeah.
criticism, and so
Yeah.
the next time that either a prospect criticizes you, a manager criticizes you, or a teammate criticizes you, it's an
Yeah.
opportunity. It doesn't mean that you've got to invest the next 6 months in your life trying to prove them wrong. But if you hear, like we're always taught, one thing is a coincidence. Two things happening in tandem is a pattern, and you better pay attention
Yeah.
to that if you want to get back alive.
Yeah.
So if this
Yeah.
happens more than once, maybe that's an opportunity. So simple
Yeah.
trigger: see criticism,
Yeah.
be open to it.
Yeah. Double
Second piece
down
of
on
this
it.
is making double down. Yeah, like I dare you to criticize me. I want to get
No,
better.
no, but like,
So
what do you
the
mean
second
by
piece,
that? Tell me more. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Dig in. So the R in trim is making this thing repeatable. So what is the
Yeah.
process? The could be a 5-step process. Like how do you begin to
Yeah.
go seek out mentors, seek out books, seek out resources to learn more about this area that you can do better in?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to isolate it. So remember, we
Mm,
in sales, you get taught El Rio: listen, reword, isolate, overcome. Same thing when I'm getting criticized. Listen, reword, isolate it, and then start to say, will this impact my sales career if I'm better at this? Maybe I'm really good at cold calling, but I'm really bad at follow up. Is that
mm,
important for me to do? Because what I have to do then, that part of making it repeatable is just because it's criticism and it would be helpful for me to gain 10 pounds of muscle. It will not be
yeah.
helpful for my sales career. So if I got a choice between going to the gym and making those calls for follow up, I got to start to prioritize is the
Hmm.
second step. So I have to prioritize based upon what outcome I want because we have limited time and limited resources in this
Yeah.
life. So where am I going to spend the time?
Love it. Love it. So we've got the trigger, we've got making it repeatable, and it's just identifying and prioritizing where does this fit. And that'll let you know how to time block. It'll let you know how much
Yep.
time to develop in this.
Yep.
If you can't overcome an objection to save your life because you're new to the world of sales, well, you better be devoting a whole lot of time to that if you want
Right.
sales to be a career. You better get
Right.
really comfortable with it. Love hearing them because it's just like playing a game. Eventually, I'm actually waiting for objections in my sales calls now because I've got
Ah,
all of them mapped out. And
yeah. Yeah.
the most interesting thing for me, the part I have the most fun in, is I dare somebody to give me an objection I haven't heard before, or
Yeah.
an objection I have heard but in a new way, because it just makes me better. So I love
Yeah.
that. We got trigger, making it repeatable. Now, how do you improve this? Let's say I've
Yeah.
done this cycle once or twice. I've learned how to overcome objections. I've learned how to find new prospects. I've learned how to be more humble, have more humility. what do I need to do to take a look back and say, all right, how do I improve how I go about doing this? How do I make it faster, better, more efficient so that I can take on more, learn more, and become more humble in the future?
Yeah, well, it's like most things, and action doesn't follow mood, mood follows action.
Mm,
So I once you start doing it, it will become this process of inventory will become so ingrained that it's useful and you'll want to do it. But the other piece is, to make it repeatable and to make sure that you can continue to improve in sales, seek the numbers that matter. Figure out what the metrics are that matter in this job. It may be the number of dials you make and the number of connects, but you got to start tracking yourself. It doesn't do any good for me to say, I think I'm doing better at overcoming objections. You can have a simple piece of paper. And when
yeah.
you're doing your call blocks, when you get an objection, give it a T for time, give it a B for busy, a C for prior use for the competitor, whatever it is, and just say, and then score yourself. If you really want to do it, I used to record myself.
Oh, yeah.
So I would record one side of my conversation, then I would listen to it, and then I would ask people to do it. And
Hmm.
the piece that I think is the most important is the practice to get better is seek people like in wrestling. I always say sales is much more like being a wrestling team than it is being a football team. In wrestling, you have a team, but it's you on the mat. And in
Yeah.
sales, it's you on the mat. There's nobody else. But why do you need a team in wrestling? You need a team to work on your strengths and weaknesses. Find the people on the team who are really good at doing Granby rolls and then practice with that person if you're going to be wrestling somebody who does Granby rolls and you're bad at it. Find
Hmm.
somebody that other degree of humility that's better at what you do than what you do and learn from them
Yeah.
because they're going to have their own patterns. But again, you got to tie it back to the other because you can go chasing down. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want to go chasing because you can chase a lot of things that are nice to improve on, but it's not like my handwriting. Who cares? I type now.
Yeah.
You know.
Love it. Love it. So you've got the trigger, making it repeatable, improvable. Now, the final bit in trim is great thing to do with any system is how do I measure success here? I
Yeah.
might be better at overcoming objections, but how do I know that I'm more humble in this area? Or how do I know that I have more humility and openness? Because this is a really hard thing to measure, right? I can measure
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
hard,
Yeah.
hard sales metrics, but at the end of the year, am I more humble than when I started? How do you
Well,
figure that out? How do you measure that?
it's one of those things. I don't think you measure humility. It's one of my mentors once said, Raleigh, you're the kind of guy that wants to be humble, but you want to be famous for it.
Yeah.
And it was a shot in the ego there to jog me, but he was an ego terrorist. But it was really helpful, and I don't think it's not about measuring the humility. It's about measuring the quality of my life.
Mm,
When I'm when I if I miss a quota, yeah, there's an emotional piece there, whatever that quota is. Yeah, I failed, blah blah. I got to get out of that deliberate manufacture of misery that keeps me in a place where it's like I won't take forward action. It's like, okay, what can I learn from this? And it's not that we ever look forward to failing or something not working, but if you learn something from it, my God, then use that lesson and then teach it. That's the
mm.
way you find the measure. The measure of my success is not in the amount of success I have, but the amount of other people I can help to avoid the mistake I made. So
So it's not
find a
just
way
getting
to
better
get
at
back.
one thing, but figuring out how do I now transmit this to the
Teach it
people that
back
need
to
it the most.
somebody. Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
on a sales team, find other people struggling that and just, and again, you're going to be trying to help people who don't want to be helped, so they're going to feel like you're bothering them. But you're going to find people like you, and you will start to build that cadre of really seekers
Hmm.
who want to get better. And that's what I want to be a part of these days. Like we are like people. We are animals by our nature, and we like to associate with similarities. I need to associate with people that are up leveling me.
Yeah.
If I'm the smartest guy in the group, that's a
You got a
fun
problem.
place to be, but it's a
Yeah.
problem. Yeah.
I dig
And
it. I
so
dig it.
among,
Well, this entire sales system for salespeople now built out on something we haven't ever really addressed, actually, which is
yeah,
humility in the world of sales, which I know actually
yeah,
helps people make more sales than the guy that steps in
right.
with a lot of ego and arrogance. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for helping us build that, Raleigh. Now, I want to give people a way to get in touch with you on two different levels.
Okay.
One is if you're a military veteran or you're active duty, getting out, and you're thinking of the world of sales. How do we
Yeah.
get into your world? How do we find out more about Sales Platoon? And the second piece is probably the one you're going to get more traction on is, hey, I run a sales team or I know a hiring manager. And what you talked about, Raleigh, finding people that have that military background and have also been trained on all the things it takes me 4 years to get somebody good on in my team. I
Yeah.
want to hire some of those folks. So, how do people get either of those things from you?
Yeah. Great. If you're an active duty military, the first thing that you do is, you just need to go to our website, www, mysalesplatoon.com. We also in salesplatoon.com, salesplatoon.io. We will put them all.
You got them all.
But if you go to Sales Platoon and find it and apply, you'll be able to apply. And there's a ton of information on there about what sales kind of is. If you're a hiring manager or somebody that hires salespeople, their main issue is not resumes and headcount, it's qualified headcount.
Yeah.
And how do I get people that are proven? So if you want to get in touch with us, same thing. There's an employer form you can fill out there. You can just email me directly at Raleigh@mysalesplatoon.com, RALEIGH. And I will be happy to do it. It'll get to our team as a monitored inbox, so multiple people have access. But the idea there is that, look, if you throw a lot of money away on soulish recruiters and sales trainers that come in and you dump a lot of money, take that same money and apply it towards sponsoring some people going through us. The people that go through our cohort, yeah, there's a cost, and I have to offset that or I can't stay. We're not a nonprofit. I have to stay in business so I can continue to do this. But for less, probably about half the price of what you would pay a bad recruiter, you can sponsor somebody going through our platoon. And what we do is we ask you to pay for that up front, and then we give you essentially like a draft pick. And so of the next 150 candidates that come through, I guarantee you're going to, one, if nothing else, you give them opportunity to interview. But number two, you're going to find your next high performer in there. And that's what I would ask is one of our cohort members said, thank you for your service rings a little hollow when you're standing in the unemployment line.
That's the truth.
So give them a shot. And if there's an employer here listening, I just want to say there's only 5 words you should be looking for. And you will always find military talent. 5 words, 5 phrases for you to Google or for you to look at in their resume. Navy, Marine Corps, Army, Air Force, and Coast Guard, maybe Space Force. All right.
Yeah.
Other than that, when those words are in their resume, forget about their resume. We suck at writing resumes. We don't know how to translate our experience. And most of the people try to help military people make it a transition, make it worse. Find those and then pull those out of the automatic sorter. And then have somebody from the military that knows military look at those resumes
and tell you what those folks did.
Guarantee you're going to find your next high performer in there. They're going to
people
find
that already know how to learn, and that's the most important thing. And that's probably the toughest thing to teach. So thank you so much, Raleigh, for kicking in with us today, man. I'm going to make sure I post your links in our show notes so people can get in touch with you on either of those levels. For us here at Bulletproof Selling, of course, every single live stream that we do, it's up on YouTube. So if you're interested in this one and all the past interviews that we have, make sure you're checking out our YouTube channel. The podcast that we create out of them on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be found. And of course, every single week, putting out a new sales system, sharing what we know over at bulletproof-selling.com. It's been a pleasure serving the sales community alongside you, Raleigh. Let's get out there, man. Let's make selling bulletproof.
I love it.